In this video, Nick Fuentes reacts to Vivek Ramaswamy becoming the Republican nominee in Ohio and argues that his rise represents a complete shift inside the GOP away from the original America First message. Nick says the Republican Party is turning into a Silicon Valley-backed techno-libertarian movement centered around billionaires, corporate interests, global labor, and mass immigration instead of nationalism, border security, and traditional conservative identity. He also explains why many dissident conservatives now see figures like Vivek and his allies as a bigger long-term threat to the movement than Democrats themselves. I am going to let my commentary for the end of the video. Let's get into it.
So Vivek Ramaswamy is now the nominee in Ohio, and here is the brutal truth about that. What you have to recognize about Vivek Ramaswamy is that people might say you have a Republican and a Democrat running in this race, and I've seen people say on Twitter, we have to reluctantly get behind Vivek because it's better than a Democrat. Anything is better than a Democrat. It's always better than the alternative. It's a lesser of two evils. These are the kinds of things that we hear every single time. Let me tell you a little bit, however, about the logic here. What does Vivek Ramaswamy represent in the Republican Party? Well, first of all, let's just state the obvious. He is a foreigner. His parents are immigrants. He's an Indian. He is a Hindu Indian, a practicing Hindu. Let's go further. He's a pharmaceutical billionaire who is in bed with this clique of J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel and all these other interests. And what you could say in a word is that he is a complete outsider to the MAGA, America First, Groyper movement. This is somebody that does not represent in any way, shape, or form a pro-white, Christian nationalist, America First vision. Not at all. He's a libertarian. He's not even a Christian. And he's an immigrant that is in favor of more immigration. He looks upon immigrants favorably. His ideology, as he said, is something like national libertarianism, a colorblind meritocracy. He wants America to throw open the borders to the best and brightest of his homeland, India, and the rest of the world. In case you haven't noticed, that is in contravention of everything that Trump represents. That is against everything that the dissident right or the ascendant America First movement represents. We want to get back to a vision of America as a European descended nation. We spawned from Europe. We are mostly European. We have a European character. We're also a Christian civilization. That is the religion of our ancestors. That is the religion of our nation. That is the religion of our civilization. We are against immigration. We have had far too much for far too long. And for all this talk about the best and brightest Indians, they're not even that good. As many people who have ever encountered them will tell you, they're not quite bright or good at all. But moreover, we want to look for the best and brightest Americans. There's a lot of talented Americans that do not have opportunities because the opportunities are being given to cheaper foreign-born labor. There's a lot of high IQ Americans that are out there in flyover country that just never get opportunity to get into higher education. Nobody ever invests in them because we have DEI programs. Because Chinese students are going to pay $70,000 a year to attend the same school that a white student would need government aid to attend, would need some kind of subsidized loan. So on basically every issue, in terms of his demographic profile, his religion, his ideology, this guy is not America First. You could even go back to his rant on Christmas, which I'll actually read to you. You might remember that shortly after Trump won the election in 2024, for whatever reason, Vivek took to Twitter on Christmas that week to drop this screed about why white Americans are so pissed off. This is what he said. He said, quote, "The reason top tech companies often hire foreign-born and first-generation engineers over Native Americans," which he puts in quotes, "isn't because of an innate American IQ deficit. A key part of it comes down to the C word, culture. Tough questions demand tough answers. Our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for far too long. A culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World or Zach and Slater over Screech and Saved by the Bell or Stefan over Steve Urkel and Family Matters will not produce the best engineers. More movies like Whiplash, fewer reruns of Friends, more math tutoring, fewer sleepovers, more weekend science competitions, fewer Saturday morning cartoons, more books, less TV, more creating, less chillin', more extracurriculars, less hanging out at the mall. Most normal American parents look skeptically at those kinds of parents. More normal American kids view those kinds of kids with scorn. Which, by the way, there's like this resentment throughout the entire thing. Because he was that kind of kid. His parents were those kinds of parents. He's not a Native American. He says if you grew up aspiring to normalcy, normalcy is what you will achieve. Close your eyes and visualize which families you knew in the 90s who raised their kids according to one model versus the other. Normalcy doesn't cut it in a hyper-competitive global market for technical talent. If we pretend like it does, we'll have our asses handed to us by China. This can be our Sputnik moment. We've awakened from slumber before, and we can do it again. And it goes on more like this. Vivek Ramaswamy is telling Americans the reason you're not winning is because you're too lazy. You're having too many sleepovers. You're watching too much TV. Really? It's not because they opened the borders to unlimited immigrants. It's not because they opened the borders to unlimited goods and services from other countries. That had nothing to do with it. It's not because NAFTA opened up the border to Mexico and all these peasants that were working on farms were then given jobs at auto plants. It's not because we have a free trade agreement with the entire world and now you have sweatshops, children in sweatshops and people killing themselves at Foxconn plants competing with Americans that want a first world quality of life. Obviously. And, once again, if you saw my show last night, there's some threads that run through both of these stories here. Obviously, the American people were given a raw deal by the ruling elites, Republican and Democrat, for the past 30 years. That was, by the way, the entire basis of the Trump movement. The pillars of the Trump movement primarily were free trade and immigration. It's the idea that simultaneously the opening of the borders to goods, but also people, is what undermined our quality of life. It was free trade that let cheap goods from Mexico, from China, from Malaysia and Vietnam, that is what destroyed industry. And it was cheap labor, low-skilled and high-skilled, from Latin America and Asia, respectively, that has undermined American labor. And so these two things have totally hollowed out the workshops, the industry, the manufacturing, the labor force, the technical ability of the people. It was policy. In other words, it was policy. Republicans and Democrats both together pursuing these policies of open borders and free trade, which is what destroyed the wealth of the country. And by wealth, I don't just mean money. I mean the human capital. I mean the capital, the heavy machinery, the factories, the technical know-how, the pipeline, getting people into factories, developing the technical ability to build machines and the machines that build the things. That was the basis of Trumpism, was pointing this out, that yes, you were screwed. People in Ohio, for that matter, Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Chicago, Pennsylvania. It was these people that were screwed as the economy went from a manufacturing economy to a service economy that then lost their livelihoods and with it lost their towns and their families and their lives. That was the whole idea. What Vivek represents is a redefinition. They're recapitulating MAGA in a new way. And they're saying now that actually the reason the white people are angry, the reason the white people don't have more, the reason America's in decline is not because of policy, but because you got too decadent. You know, think about the way the country is now. They're telling us you're still too lazy. People are picking up 2 and 3 jobs now. People are, I know people that have applied for hundreds of jobs and done dozens of interviews, and they can't get a call back. People have been through the gauntlet of 3, 4, 5 interviews, and they don't get a job. And in the middle of this, $6 gas because of a war in Iran, inflation because they doubled the money supply because they shut down the businesses during COVID. They told every business in America other than Amazon and Walmart that they had to shut down for a year. After all of these disastrous policies, war with Iran, more free trade, a COVID lockdown, doubling the money supply. In the middle of all this, Vivek is telling people, yeah, the problem is you. You're lazy. You're enjoying high school too much. Your kids are having too many sleepovers. They're watching too much TV. We need to be more like a sweatshop in Malaysia. We need to be more like these gauche Indian strivers that came from poverty. They came from abject poverty, people shitting in the river. What does this represent? This is a redefinition of MAGA. And by the way, it's a package deal. That's Tucker, that's Vivek, that's JD Vance. And they're telling us that the new version of MAGA, the new version of making America great again, is not blaming the globalists, not blaming the policies of free trade and open borders, not celebrating heritage Native Americans, not celebrating our greatness as a civilization, but alternatively blaming those people. Telling those people, you got cocky, you got lazy, you got decadent. Instead, we need to learn from the Mexicans. We need to learn from the Chinese. Indians and Jews, these strivers, they're now going to wag their fingers and tell us, the problem is you. The solution is we need to open the border to more H-1Bs. We need to be more like them. We're going to continue all those things. You got to just compete. You either got to learn to program, learn AI, or fall behind. And too bad. That's the new message. Now, let's get back to the Ohio governor's election. What is actually at stake here? Well, it turns out that what is at stake is not actually what happens in Ohio. It doesn't even really matter that much. Ohio holds a governor's election every 4 years, and a Republican almost always wins. So what is this election really about? It doesn't even matter so much what happens in Ohio, what a Democrat might do, what a Republican might do. What is at stake here is that if Vivek Ramaswamy becomes the governor of Ohio, it doesn't end there. It never ends. He becomes governor of Ohio, and then he's a statewide elected official. He is now on the ladder to build a national political profile for himself. So that means another Ramaswamy for president campaign. That means he's going to be in another Republican cabinet at some point. We're going to be dealing with this guy for the rest of our lives. But it's not just him. It also sends a message to every other Republican in the country, every prospective candidate, but also to the Republican Party, which is that this works. The voters will tolerate anything. We can choose this piece of shit. We can choose this arrogant, gauche striver, this pretentious billionaire douchebag. We can pick him to be the nominee, and people in a state like Ohio, Appalachia, Rust Belt, white, MAGA, white working class, blue collar, we can put a guy like that in Ohio and he could still win. And what message does that teach the Republican Party? It tells them that that's the new blueprint, that's the new model, and that's going to work there, and it's going to work in Pennsylvania, and it's going to work in Michigan and Wisconsin, and that is the new ideology of the party. It worked in Ohio, so that's the party. Either the voters will tolerate it, or it worked, so it's a winning message, and we'll celebrate it. But that is what we will teach the GOP. Not only that we're okay with it, but they're going to give us more of that. And again, think about that inversion. What we have been getting, at least in name only, at least nominally from Trump, is a message of nationalism. At the minimum, there's this expectation that we're going to have mass deportations, a border wall, a tariff schedule. We're going to have protectionism. At least with Trump, there is the expectation because of that original campaign. that at least they have to pay lip service to these ideas of nativism, immigration restriction, trade protection, remanufacturing, reindustrialization, all these things. Because that was the original movement. If we get Vivek, it's a huge backslide, and you're telling people you have to get comfortable with a browner, less Christian, less right-wing, less nationalistic Republican Party. You're just going to have to shut up and get used to it. The new GOP is going to be striver Indians, Jews, Chinese, gays. That's going to be your new GOP. No, they're not going to be Christian. No, they're not going to be white. No, they're not going to even like white people. And no, they're not even going to be conservative. They're going to be libertarian. And you're going to get used to it because they have the money, because Vivek is a billionaire, because David Sachs is a billionaire, because they're going to cough up the money. And we're going to get that. That is going to be the GOP now. And that, by the way, is our only shot. It's either the Democrats or the GOP. If you give Vivek the victory, the GOP backslides away from, Trumpism was a failure. It's going to get worse. We're going to have techno-libertarians and, Zionist nationalists running the party, and then that is your only option other than the Democrats, because the GOP is the organized, institutionalized opposition to the left. So what is really at stake in Ohio? It's not what happens in Ohio. It's not about the governance. What is at stake in Ohio is the fate of the Republican Party, which is the fate of the organized opposition. If Vivek wins, sure, it's going to be better than the Democrat. Certainly. 100%. Take it to the bank. If Vivek wins, he's going to be a better governor for Ohio for 4 years. He's going to be marginally better. Maybe he will be, maybe he won't be. I imagine if he's Republican, he'll be better. But so what? In 4 years, there'll be another election, and maybe he wins and maybe he doesn't. But what happens after that is you teach the Republican Party at the national level. First of all, you give him a career, and he's going to be in the pantheon of Republican leadership for the rest of our lives, potentially. But you also teach the GOP as an organization a lesson, which is not only that we will tolerate this, but that this works. That this works. And they can try it again, and they can give us more of this. They don't need to pander anymore to white people. They don't need to pander anymore to Christians. They don't need to even pretend to be Christian. They don't even need to pretend to care about our heritage or white people or anything like that. That's the lesson you're teaching them. So it is so much more important in this election that he loses. Even if he might be a marginally better governor, what he does to the national GOP is far more detrimental. That's why he has to lose at any cost. That's the game that we have to play. The message has to be, if you give us an Indian billionaire who hates God, we will send it back. We will take the Democrat. We will take our lumps. We'll take the L. We will re-roll in 4 years. Try again. You gave us Vivek. You gave us this shit. We're sending it back. We don't want it. You can have your Vivek back. You can have your candidate back. We don't want him. Try again in the next 4 years. That's your problem. And you know what? That's going to hurt the GOP more than it's going to hurt anybody in Ohio. I'll tell you that much. Because you know what it means if Vivek gets the governorship in Ohio? How many kickbacks for his friends that J.D. Vance knows? J.D. Vance is a venture capitalist. That means that he invests, he makes all these very risky bets in tech companies. And he worked with Peter Thiel. So they're putting money into Anduril, and they're putting money into all these different tech platforms. They're putting money into all these tech startups. What do you think happens when Vivek becomes the governor of Ohio as the Republican? Kickbacks. Kickbacks, that's what that means. Kickbacks for Republican billionaires, kickbacks for Silicon Valley, for little tech, kickbacks for the politically connected to J.D. Vance. Why would we reward these people? Why would we reward the GOP? Why would we reward this patronage network with these kickbacks from the state of Ohio when they're giving us an Indian Hindu that hates us and is an immigrant? People say, you're only shooting yourself in the foot if you don't vote for the Republican. No, we're shooting you in the face. And that's what we want to do, metaphorically. People say if you don't vote for the Republican and you get a Democrat, you're cutting your nose to spite your face. You're shooting yourself in the foot. You're only hurting yourself. No, you're wrong. We're hurting you. Because if Vivek doesn't win the election, then Anduril doesn't get its kickbacks. If Vivek doesn't win the election, Les Wexner doesn't get his kickback. If Vivek doesn't win the election, none of the billionaires, none of the Republicans get what they want. Good. Fuck you. You didn't give us the candidate we wanted. Now you don't get the governor's mansion. You don't get the seat and all the benefits and privileges that are conferred by it. Vivek doesn't get a political career, and all his backers don't get the kickbacks that they want. So it is actually about sending a message. I am not a Democrat. I am not a leftist. I am not even liberal. I'm right-wing. I'm an identitarian. I'm a nationalist. And yeah, Amy Acton is not going to be good for Ohio. But here's the way it's going to shake out. In November, you got two candidates that can win the election. You got a Democrat and a Republican. You got Amy Acton and you got Vivek Ramaswamy. It's a binary. Those are the only two that are going to win. Now, if you vote for Vivek, Vivek is going to win. If you sit out, well, Vivek won't get those votes. But if you vote for Amy Acton, it improves her chances of winning. And so this is why I'm telling all the Groypers, we are going for the Democrat in Ohio. And I know it's unpopular, and I know it's controversial. Good. And I know people are not going to like it. That's fine. People are going to hate me for this, and they're going to call me a shill, and they're going to say I'm a plant, and they're going to say we're vindicated on him. He turns out to be a Democrat. Fine. Let's be the villain. Let's be the villain, because we hate the Republican Party right now more than we hate the Democrats. You're damn right. And you want to know why? Because the Democrats, at least it's the devil we know. The Democrats are the enemy. I'll take an enemy over a traitor. The Republican Party put up a pharmaceutical billionaire Hindu Indian who wants more H-1Bs to run for governor of a Rust Belt state. That is a betrayal. That is an insult. They have spit in the face of every Republican in the state of Ohio. They thought that they could get away with that. They thought that we would tolerate that they could shove that down our throats because we're stuck, because they have us hostage, because we have no other options. We have to go with the Republican. So they really thought they would get away with that. That's who they like. Because Vivek is a billionaire, he's got a lot of money, and he's got a lot of friends in Silicon Valley with deep pockets. So the Republican Party leadership loves it. They don't care that we absolutely hate it. They know that we're going to shut up and take it because we got nowhere else to go, because they think that they have us hostage. I am not a Democrat. I'm under no illusions about what the Democratic Party represents. I think they're immoral. But I am going to tell people to vote for the Democrats, to send a message to the Republicans. We will not tolerate a Republican Party that doesn't represent us anymore. We will not tolerate a Republican Party that isn't America first. If it's not America first, we're sending it back. If it's not America first, we're not voting for it. You're not going to get the seat. You're not going to get the benefits. We will not tolerate it. So yes, we are going out for the Democrat happily, proudly, as a middle finger to Vivek Ramaswamy and his giant head. Every vote for Amy Acton from a Republican, from a Groyper, from a nationalist, from a Trump supporter, it is a middle finger to Donald Trump and Vivek Ramaswamy for trying to foist this upon us. And that's how you have to look at it. That's what it is. It is a protest vote. It is a fuck you. Because we would rather go with the Democrats just to demonstrate you don't own us. You don't own our vote. You don't hold us hostage. You're not going to tell us what the GOP is going to be. The voters will tell you. So you gave us Vivek, we're going to give you Amy Acton. And yeah, nobody's going to be happy about it. You're not going to be happy. We're not going to be happy. Here's the message. Do better next time. Do better in these other races in 26. Do better in 2028. And in Ohio, you know what? You're going to get another chance in 2030. Ohio's a very Republican state. They go 10 points for the Republicans. Usually, they haven't had a Democratic governor in almost 20 years. So I'm happy with Amy Acton as a one-term Democrat governor. Give the Republican Party a chance to get their act together, and maybe next time they can give us a candidate that we can get behind. So I'm going out to Ohio, and it's not going to be for a spoiler candidate. It's going to be getting behind the candidate that will win, that can defeat Vivek, and that's the Democrat. It's going to be a protest vote. It's going to be a middle finger. There is nobody worse. We cannot there is no circumstance where we can allow Vivek Ramaswamy to advance. He has to be shut out of politics completely. We have to slam the door on his arrogant, big, stupid fucking head and tell him, no, that's a bridge too far. There's a lot that we have tolerated, and people voted for Trump despite their reservations. There's a lot that we have tolerated over the years. That's too far. Absolutely not. I'll take Acton over Ramaswamy. Absolutely not. Under no circumstances can he advance another step or get a career. F you. And F the GOP that gave him to us.
At the end of the day, this is why so many people are furious with the Republican Party right now. Because voters were told this was going to be a nationalist movement. They were told this was going to be America first. Secure the border. Protect American workers. Rebuild industry. Put Americans before corporations and foreign interests. That was the entire sales pitch. That was the reason millions of people got behind Trump in the first place. And now look at where we are. The GOP is slowly morphing into this weird Silicon Valley billionaire coalition where every problem gets blamed on ordinary Americans instead of the people who shipped jobs overseas, flooded the labor market, and turned the economy into a casino for global investors. They want to lecture working Americans about competitiveness, while people can barely afford rent, groceries, insurance, or a house. They want to tell you the problem is you watched too much TV or had too much fun growing up instead of admitting the ruling class sold the country out for profit. That's why this debate matters so much. It's not just about one candidate in Ohio. It's about what the Republican Party is becoming. Is this still supposed to be the party of nationalism, borders, and the American worker? Or is it becoming a techno-libertarian billionaire party with patriotic branding slapped on top of it? Because a lot of people on the right are looking around and realizing the donor class never disappeared. The consultants never disappeared. The corporate interests never disappeared. They just changed the language and found new spokesmen. And honestly, conservatives are getting sick of being treated like hostages every election. Every single cycle, it's the same emotional blackmail. You have no choice. Shut up and vote Republican. Don't complain, don't criticize. Just accept whatever candidate the donors picked for you. Meanwhile, the base gets ignored over and over again while the party leadership chases billionaire money, tech investors, and establishment approval. At some point, people stop caring about the party label altogether, because if the party no longer represents the voters, then what exactly are voters defending anymore? A logo, a brand, a donor network? That's the real crisis happening inside conservatism right now. The grassroots and the establishment are moving in two completely different directions. And here's the thing Republican leadership still doesn't understand. Voters are not infinitely loyal. People supported America first because they believed it was actually different from the old GOP. The second voters feel like they're being dragged back into the same corporate globalist politics with a new face attached to it, the entire coalition starts cracking apart. You can already see it happening online. Younger conservatives are becoming way more hostile to the establishment wing of the party because they feel betrayed. They feel like the movement is getting hijacked in real time. That's why races like this become symbolic. They're not just about policy. They become a referendum on what direction the movement is heading in. And if conservatives keep rewarding politicians and candidates who move further away from the original America First message, then eventually that message disappears completely. Drop your thoughts below and tell me honestly, are Republican voters being represented anymore? Or are they just expected to fall in line no matter what candidate gets pushed on them? Subscribe if you want more videos like this.